participation à tout le monde. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. So just a reminder, even if you're listening in English today, please click on the globe on the bottom right so that you can hear our partners that when they speak in Spanish and Haitian Creole. Now it is my great pleasure to open this meeting, our Climate and Heat Health Task Force workshop focused on heat and housing, the impacts of extreme heat on our population, particularly in their homes. And today it is my great, I'm very excited to introduce our mayor, my shiro, Daniela Levine Cava, who really, without her leadership and listening to community members like yourselves and many more who were expressing the concern that in addition to addressing our risks of sea level rise and flooding, that extreme heat was a major concern in our most vulnerable communities to address. And so Daniela heard that and created my position and this task force to create an action plan to accelerate initiatives that were already underway, including in the housing area, to address extreme heat. So with that, welcome Daniela. We have over 60 members that include our members of our task force, various members within your county team, the university partners, municipal partners, community-based organizations, and just passionate, interested residents. So thank you. Oh, unmute.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jane, for that wonderful introduction. And I am truly excited to be with you for this workshop. And it's a dream come true for me to have this broad participation, exactly what we had in mind when we created this Chief Heat Officer. And so very proud to be with all of you, especially today on International Women's Day. Hooray. And I'm looking at my panel in front of me and I see a bunch of women leaders, very excited for that. So this is the 5th in a series, as Jane mentioned, and it is being led by the Climate and Heat Task Force that we put together in the county to make sure that we could be prepared, as we always need to be. Preparedness are us in Miami-Dade County, but also to link up across the world. So we're part of a network of chief heat officers. Now we're up to 5, I think you told me, Jane. And I had the great good pleasure to meet along with the Athens and Freetown, Sierra Leone chief heat officers as well, thanks to the support of Arch Rockefeller Foundation. So I appointed Jane as our county's first chief heat officer, and the world was watching. Not just our counties, but the world's first official chief heat officer. So everybody else, got on board, and that is great. It just acknowledges how important these issues are to our residents and really to residents everywhere, because we are in a subtropical zone, soon to be tropical. So we need to think ahead. I asked Jane to form this task force specifically so that we could be sure that equity was at the forefront of our discussions around heat. We don't want this to be about the privileged who can be in their icy towers. It is about our broader community, our workforce, our families everywhere. So this is what she's done to make sure that we can all work together to lift up all communities affected by heat. We all know, you're here, you already get it, that it's not just inconvenient to have rising temperatures. It is actually something that is threatening our lives and our safety of so many, particularly those who must be outdoors during the heat of the day. So that is of critical importance to our economy and to the health of so many. Obviously, the cost of electricity is going up to cool our homes and our offices. There's the urban heat islands that are created for particularly vulnerable areas. And so especially here in Miami-Dade County with hurricanes and others that experience tropical storms, the combined effect of heat and those storms, which in our case fall around the same time. And we have created a heat season to correspond, almost perfectly overlapping with our hurricane season, to really promote awareness and preparedness. So thanks to Miami-Dade County and the Resilient 305 partnerships that we created, our involvement in the International Extreme Heat Resilient Alliance is part of our efforts. We're in constant communication around the world with our colleagues and also local leaders who are addressing these challenges. So for us, I think we've made our commitment very clear, and we invite others to join us. We've done extensive surveying and conversations throughout Miami-Dade County, which is a population of almost 3 million people. I've been mayor for a year and a third, and my premier event in the first year was something called Thrive 305, where we reached out through surveys, door to door, as well as online and in-person meetings. We've reached at least 1% of the population, which is very significant. And from those results, we can tell you that extreme heat shows up quite a bit in community priorities. 77% of the respondents said that they are concerned about protecting themselves and their properties during natural disasters and hazards, including from heat. And 55% said that access to active quality parks and open spaces with a major thriving tree canopy was the most important service that our county could offer to ensure their long-term health after a pandemic. So we certainly learned through the pandemic that open spaces, parks are critical, and that tree canopy is a big part. And Jane has been very actively promoting the tree canopy. Another major concern for us is the number of affordable and safe housing units available to our residents. We have a very old and unfortunately decrepit public housing stock of over 40 years that lacks central air conditioning for the most part, requires substantial upgrades due to decades of deferred maintenance. So we're working to tackle these challenges as well. We have federal dollars from something called the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, or RAD, and we've been using that to upgrade 6,000 units so far. And we are pushing forward with more. We're also building 14,000 new affordable resilient units in the next year that is in process. And so these are just a few examples of the things that we're doing to deal with the intersect of extreme heat and housing. All of you play a crucial role as well, our listeners and participants today. We're going to be recommending steps that we can all take to address the challenges of the increasing energy burden and the health impacts that people are facing in their homes. We cannot wait to get your ideas. I'm going to stop talking in a second, and we're very interested to hear from everyone else. So I want to thank the task force and all of the participants for joining the webinar this morning. For me, again, a dream come true to have you all together solving these critical issues for our county and for our world. Back to you, Jane.
Thank you, Daniela. Very inspiring. And just want a number of people had an internal county Teams link, so they were joining in late. So I want to let them know that there is we have translation here. And so if you can click on the globe in your right-hand bottom corner and click, if you want to listen in English, please click that so that you can have translation. Thank you very much. I'm going to now share my screen and begin a presentation. Oh boy, where? Sorry, I'm just trying to. Okay, is everyone able to see my screen at this point? Can someone tell me?
No.
No,
Uh-oh.
sorry.
Okay. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Mayor. So today, as I have in the past, I'm going to quickly go through our overview presentation just to make sure everyone understands what the extreme heat risks are, particularly as it relates to housing, and what we're doing here in the county and our partners are already doing. And then just to get your creative juices and thinking caps on some of the ideas from what the county and partner organizations could do to improve coordination and accelerate our initiatives. And then we'll break out into 4 breakout groups so that you can all provide us some input. And then we'll come back and hear summaries from each of those groups. So extreme heat, as many of you know, is the leading weather-related killer in the United States. More than floods, hurricanes, forest fires, tornadoes. It is often called the silent killer because it's not as visible. And really here in South Florida, the combination of heat and humidity is what makes it more dangerous for heat-related illnesses, including minor issues like heat cramps, but then more serious heat exhaustion and even heat stroke, which can lead to deaths. Most of the good news is that most of these heat-related illnesses and deaths are preventable. And that's why we're here today, and in this workshop, there's a lot we can do to prevent these both health and economic impacts related to extreme heat. And most of the high-risk groups experience a disproportionate amount of these health impacts. So there are people that are more sensitive to heat, like young children, older adults, pregnant women, and then also people that have more exposure to heat, such as outdoor workers and our lower income residents that can't afford the air conditioning that many of us are able to enjoy. And these extreme heat conditions, we know heat here in Miami-Dade, we've always had it, but it's actually getting much more, both due to climate change and our urban development patterns. So we've had an average increase of over 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1985. And in the next 80 years, we're going to have 4 to 10 more degrees. And that even just by mid-century, we can go from a week of days with a heat index of 105 when we're all at risk if we're exposed to heat for a long period of time, to close to 3 months of a heat index of 105. So it will increase, and that increases the cost of our electricity if you're using air conditioning. Air conditioning is the #1 draw on our energy use here in South Florida. And most of our low-income residents, the vast majority of them, are already cost burdened because of the high cost of housing here. And many of them, over 70%, live in buildings that were built before our current hurricane and more efficient building codes. So it is harder for them to keep the cooling inside, keep it and retain it, so it's more expensive. Luckily, through our federal support of utility assistance program managed by our county Community Action and Human Services, our county provides utility assistance to over 30,000 households a year. And, you know, this is life-saving assistance. But we want to move away from this, just from this crisis type of assistance to something that's more sustainable, help people reduce those costs through retrofits, through redevelopment, and at the same time, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve health outcomes, and provide local jobs. And reduce the impacts on the urban heat island. Mayor Cava, in her engagement initiative, the Thrive 305 survey, we heard from residents, 77% of the residents are concerned about protecting themselves and their property from natural disasters, including extreme heat, 77%. Certain areas were more focused on preserving their existing homes or retrofitting them, particularly in Homestead, Hialeah, and Miami Gardens. Others, like the city of Miami, Opa-locka, really were focused more on new housing development as their top preference. And greening private homes was the most popular carbon reduction strategy in several of our cities, and a very high one overall. So this, you know, the greening can also reduce the utility costs. So what's the county doing? So we have luckily had a requirement. Our federal government has not yet required air conditioning to be in public housing, but the county has required that since 2001. And we're in the process of revamping our public housing through a program with the Housing and Urban Development, U.S. Housing and Urban Development HUD, called the Rental Assistance Demonstration Project, where we're partnering with private developers to redevelop public housing to make them more efficient and more overall, improve the overall quality of the housing, including upgraded streetscapes and park space, art plazas, such as what we saw with the Liberty Square Rising project. In addition, Mayor Cava is forming a new Office of Housing Advocacy, a housing advocate, to help residents with their displacement and other rights concerns. We hope to really leverage that advocate for some of this work as well. And the county has really upped its dedication in terms of funding for affordable housing. All county-funded affordable housing developments are required by code to be built to sustainable building standards. So, you know, LEED, Energy Star, Florida Green Building certification levels of building. They've recently provided notice about the new flexible preservation program for our naturally occurring affordable housing, smaller properties, and set aside a number of programs. I'm not going to get into them all here because I want to get to your input, but this presentation and this recording will be on the Miami Foundation Extreme Heat website, that you can come back to these links and refer all of these references of funding sources for both multifamily and single family homes. In addition, with partnerships, the county's been involved in trying to advance a cool roof ordinance at the state level for commercial buildings. The city of Miami and Miami Beach, our Resilient 305 partners, already have cool roof requirements within their zoning code. We partnered with the Enterprise Community Partners and Florida Housing Coalition on Keep Safe Miami. This was funded from both the Southeast Sustainable Directors Network and the Chase Foundation. And this is a toolkit for retrofitting multifamily housing, not only for energy efficiency, but energy redundancy, protection on wind and flood. It's a full service audit that owners and operators of either naturally occurring or funded affordable housing, regulated affordable housing, can easily see what they need to do and also get tips on how to finance it. In addition, Miami Homes for All partnered with the City of Miami and others in the Connect Capital initiative, which created a flexible community loan fund to address gaps in that market of NOAA properties. The challenge is getting a pipeline of projects for those that financing opportunity. So that's something that we're going to discuss later. On the single family side, we have the weatherization program that is funding from the federal government through the Department of Energy that's managed again by our Community Affairs and Human Services Department. It's never been enough, and the real opportunity here is to work through the state to increase the flexibility of that funding, both weatherization and the LIHEAP programs, to include air conditioning and other measures that are important to us. We also have partners that the Climate and Heat Equity Coalition, led by Catalyst Miami and now the Miami Climate Alliance, is looking to also work with us on that AC provision and weatherization, and also look for policies around requiring window screens for all rental housing. The Clio Institute and Vote Solar negotiated with Florida Power and Light during their rate case, and were able to secure a shutoff trigger where no renters or homeowners would get their utility shut off when temperature reaches 95 or above. Both SMATH Miami and the South Florida Community Land Trust are building wealth through the development of these community land trusts to preserve neighborhoods and affordability. Two financing organizations, both the Solar Energy Loan Fund and the Neighborhood Housing Services of South Florida, are providing low interest and favorable financing for homeowners to both do energy efficiency as well as solar. So we have, and I'm sure there are more that I'm missing, and that's why we're going to hear from you later today. And you're going to help us know who else is doing great work in this area that we need to include in this conversation. And with that, I wanted to, speaking of partners, we have two different initiatives coming out of the University of Miami to help us better understand the heat health risks and economic risks related to housing. So the first person I want to turn this over to is Lene Turek from University of Miami.
Great, thank you, Jane. And I will keep this very short as I realize the agenda is quite long today. But yes, as Jane said, my name is Lene. I'm from the University of Miami, and I am doing this work with the wonderful Natalia Brown from Catalyst Miami. And we are really interested in understand specifically in the Miami context what it is like to be in a hot home and what are the barriers that people are facing that are preventing them from being cool in their homes. So what you see on the slide in the 3 different languages provided that are common in Miami, in English, Spanish, and Creole, is an opportunity to get more information about this project that we're doing that, again, is to understand how hot are you at home and how does that translate to your energy bill. And again, the reason we're so interested in your energy bill is because we know that AC is one of the best strategies for responding to health impacts that from being in a hot home. But also we want to talk to you about different other strategies that you'd be interested in or other barriers that you're facing that are making you too hot at home. And so please, if you're interested, we are going to be doing a project over this upcoming heat season in which we'll be having sensors in people's homes, and that will capture both the temperature and the humidity levels that you face, as well as a qualitative interview. So we want to understand those stories. We want to know really the nuances of what your experience is. And so we will be providing a compensation of $100 for every participant who wants to be involved with this. And so if you're interested in getting more information about this, please go to the link provided, whatever language is most appropriate for you, or you could also use that QR code. You just hold up your phone with the camera and that will take you right to it. And the last thing I'll say is that if you are a community organization and you're working with people who might be interested in participating in this information gathering project, please, I will post my email and Natalia also post your email in the chat. Please reach out to us and we will share with you a toolkit of information we have that we've put together to bring people into doing this work with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lene. And our next speaker is Megan Donovan from the UM's Housing Solutions Lab. Megan.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share the work that we're doing here at the Office of Civic and Community Engagement at UM. I will also keep this short. So real quick, our mission is to enhance university community collaborations by engaging the university's academic resources in the enrichment of civic and community life in South Florida by connecting students, faculty, and community organizations together in a collaborative process that translates academic knowledge into civic responsibility to promote positive social change. So I'm going to go ahead and share some links and some documents in the chat as I go along. My name is Megan Donovan. I'm the grant program manager for a program called CAMP. It's Climate and Equity Mapping Platform. Can you go back to the last slide, please? Thank you. CAMP is an extension of our existing housing resiliency work with a focus on the impacts that extreme heat exposure has on communities in Miami-Dade County. So if you want to check out some of our other local affordable housing and community development resources and tools as part of our Housing Solutions Lab, there is a link in the chat. Oh, sorry, I'm going too fast. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and share just some short write-ups of our housing resiliency initiatives and the CAMP project. So you can check those out at your convenience. And of course, you can reach out to me if you'd like some more information. So one of the primary deliverables of CAMP is to update our existing MAP platform, which stands for Miami Affordability Project, with extreme heat indicators. Another part of this project is where we've initiated planning for the development of a communications toolkit that will provide a roadmap for other municipalities to reproduce our best practices for cultivating community-driven equitable development tools. Also, we've been researching local and national examples of efforts focused on extreme heat and health that will inform our approach to developing a policy toolkit to identify strategies for addressing ways to improve affordable housing in the face of climate threats. Okay, sorry, I'm still going too fast. I'm so sorry. MAP was originally launched in 2014 to provide planners, housing advocates, municipalities, and nonprofits focused on equitable community development with access to data about public and assisted housing in Miami-Dade County. Now, MAP has expanded to include over 300 data filters and was most recently augmented in 2020 to include indicators about sea level rise. So if you could go back to the last slide, please, sorry. This screenshot, yeah, thank you. So this shows kind of an example of something you could do with MAP. It shows sea level rise projections, cost burdened housing units by census tract, and also the affordable housing overlaid on top of that. And there's a bunch of other stuff that you can do. So for the next slide, please. This is basically just a summary table of all the layers that are available in MAP, different data sources and examples of that. And we're currently working to add extreme heat layers and additional extreme heat data to existing layers as part of CAMP. Next slide, please. These are the data sets we identified to include in MAP. So as you can see here, we've sort of divided those into different categories of life experience, built environment, heat, and health. And you can go to the next slide. And then if you'd like any more information, please reach out to myself directly or to the office with any questions. We really strive to generate tools that have proven efficacy in the localities that you all work in, and we rely on your expert input to make that happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan. Great work. So before we get into breakout groups, I just want to play some ideas for discussion. Some of the things that both the county and our partner organizations could do, or opportunities. One is to explore further expanding the approved measures and funding per household with both the weatherization and LIHEAP programs. Another is to look at how we can work with zoning to allow for either accessory dwelling units or incentivize affordability with gentle increases in zoning. There is this county $2 million set aside for innovation. That might be ways to pilot different initiatives that could be then scaled. And a couple of ideas from other places in Philadelphia. You know, housing is also about neighborhoods and how we can build social capacity. They created a Black Captain program in Philadelphia, and in the summertime initiated all sorts of water play activities out in the streets just to help with cooling people off. And in Phoenix, they have a requirement for all landlords need to keep the rental units at a certain minimum degree of cooling, depending on whether it's using evaporative cooling or air conditioning. It's different levels. I don't think we really use much evaporative cooling here, but that's more for dry heat, I think. But anyway, that is a standard that might be worth exploring. So we are going to break out into groups, and we have 5 questions. So we don't have a lot of time. We have about 40 minutes to discuss these. So we're going to need short answers from each of you so everyone can get a chance to provide input. First, how do we accelerate the retrofit or redevelopment of single-family homes to reduce the energy burden? Secondly, how might we accelerate the retrofit or redevelopment of multifamily housing, for instance, by leveraging Keep Safe Miami and some of the partnerships that have been created through that, and Connect Capital Miami. What are some of the best practices from elsewhere that we should look to for energy retrofit benefits? And what have I mentioned a number of partner initiatives, but what are other municipalities and NGO partners that we haven't mentioned doing? And what other stakeholders, you know, private property owners, et cetera, other stakeholders, banks, insurance companies, need to be involved in this conversation? So with that, you're going to be going out into 4 breakout sessions. And then we'll come back at 10 minutes to noon to have a summary discussion. Thank you. Chelsea, you can start sending us.
Okay. So I'm opening the rooms, and it'll just take me a moment to get everyone assigned.
So I did want to go ahead and highlight the two protests, the one today and the one on the 15th, highlighting the lack of affordable housing, but also provide you with information that in California, they've set up, like Esber was talking about, in the parks and recreation having a role, but they've set up a type of tiny home setup, which can be retrofit with like a type of roofing for houseless people. And so this type of situation can help with the houseless populations in Miami, and therefore set them up with a way to find housing, and also so it's like a tiny home village which the county would then pay for. It would also help keep people off the streets. It would be a better way, and it would help with cooling with the way that the roofs are set up for cooling. They're not very large, but they fit the needs for housing. They fit the environmental needs, and with a tree canopy setup, they can also help with cooling. And also we have to think about the amount of affordable housing that actually exists currently in Miami, and there isn't any. So I did want to go ahead and highlight those protests today in the afternoon at 4 and on the 15th at 9 a.m. So if anyone's interested in fighting for affordable housing, because we don't have any or very few of it, please join us.
Where is it? And
Both of them are at Government Center.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe we're going to be having people come. Are people coming back into our room now, Chelsea? Is that?
Sorry, the interpretation's a little slow. Yes, so I can close the rooms now if we feel good to close out. Okay.
So again, you can send follow-up to resilience@miamifoundation.org for any follow-up comments on these questions, ideas of additional stakeholders. I heard certainly developers and Florida Power and Light and our utilities. I heard that we need more of a focus on the unhoused. And so that I agree is an exposed population. And I'll be doing my best to provide a summary of all the great comments today. Oh, good. Kimberly's joining into our group here. She's also from Neighborhood Housing Services. Any comments on best practices from elsewhere that we should look at quickly as people are coming back in?
No, I want to add quickly, Jane, that when we're talking about best practices and a lot of the topics we covered, we also really need to break down existing and new construction.
Yes.
These are two different animals and totally different responses and approaches. So I think, we got to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and even a system to evaluate a property, helping owners evaluate their property as to the costs and benefits of retrofit versus new development and the options that they have. I think a tool even on that front is important to help people, particularly at the lower density level. The higher density levels, they have that in-house. Yeah, these are great resources. Welcoming back people to our session. It looks like we're pretty close. Chelsea, are we close to have everyone back?
Yes, we have everybody.
Excellent. So thank you all for I hope was your sessions were as rich and robust in terms of input and too short as our group. So one, I want to remind people that any additional comments or ideas for any of these questions, you can send to resilience@miamifoundation.org. So I'm going to quickly talk about my group and then we'll turn it over to the other facilitators to give a brief summary. So we heard from other colleagues at University of Miami in the civil engineering that they're working on drones to capture thermal imagery over day and nighttime, and that we could focus those in more vulnerable areas and use that as a potential way to identify areas for innovative financing and innovative retrofits. We heard from a couple of different people focused on the urban tree canopy and how important making sure we look at low land development codes to encourage property owners to use trees to cool and keep their utility costs down, as well as other low-cost measures such as insulation, like our neighborhood housing services of South Florida is doing to focus on insulation measures until they have the larger financing for the larger renovations that are needed. We talked about the importance of bringing in our utility partners in energy efficiency retrofit incentives and to address the split incentives, particularly to encourage property owners to do these retrofits. We talked about a great incentive that was done to convert to LED lighting, making sure that our property owners are incentivized to do these retrofits that might save their renters money. Catalyst Miami, Zalalem reminded us that we also need to look at our unhoused, and that there is some demonstrations today at Government Center at 4 p.m. and at March 15th to talk about housing justice in Miami-Dade County. And that we need to work together with private sector on new technologies to keep it low. I'm going to turn it over because we have very limited time left to one of our other facilitators. I didn't quite get to all of the great suggestions, but Ludovica, could you share from your group just briefly?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jane. We also had an amazing group who definitely touched upon the importance of tree canopy. In fact, I'm going to put in the chat the Zoom link for our next workshop, which will be on March 29th, and will be also focusing especially on tree canopy. And just put the link in the chat. We got great feedback, especially when it comes down to the need for better mapping of housing that needs renovation, and especially expanding the network of providers that can help with this energy burden. And there was a very important stress on the fact that within the development plans and even sourcing these developers that could assist, that the burden shouldn't be left on the shoulders of the communities that are impacted, but it should be the county or the municipalities that do provide these services. Because of course, the people who are impacted already are under great stressors. So this is obviously a case of environmental justice as well. And I will pass it to our other facilitators.
We have Susanna. You want to share from your group?
Yes, I'm trying to quickly highlight things that. We talked a little bit about the fact there's confusion about the pros and cons of existing loan programs that residents are already being approached about. There were suggestions for the need for greater education Kimberly mentioned an idea of training all housing counseling reps, I guess certified counseling agencies to do train the trainers focused on climate change and resilience information, including how to I guess live in your home in a more efficient manner. There was also the idea of having like little demonstration miniature houses with showing people what resilient and energy and water efficient technology looks like. Several people mentioned rebates. Somebody mentioned that the homes that are submitted for design, the homes that are designed and then permitted are not necessarily the homes that get built. And so we have to figure out a way to make, to better manage that. Jorge mentioned aligning the county's affordable housing programs with other municipal efforts so that there's just a better alignment and kind of maximizing resources. Dolores talks about tax credits for retrofits. Lene spoke about how there's you have to make sure, because there's not necessarily the building owner doesn't have an incentive to make the building more efficient because it's the renters who are paying the bills. And so how to tie the improvements of the apartment to do something so that the building owner is incentivized. And she spoke about covenants. Marta spoke about green leasing. Dolores reminded us that there was a grant rebate program that she ran several years ago in the county to help nonprofits do retrofits for their buildings that they owned for energy efficiency improvements. Marta mentioned the Green and Healthy Home Initiative, which is in Maryland, Tennessee, and Rhode Island. And that's as far as we got.
Awesome. Yeah. And thank you, Susanna. And Galen, I'm going to lean on people for a couple more extra minutes today because it was such a rich day, such a high need topic.
I've got
Go.
just one thing that, I mean, we talked about a lot, but I think the group that we said wasn't there or isn't here is as the people with the money or who own the assets, like the landlords or people who are buying multifamily houses, and then also the utilities. They need to be a part of this conversation. And we have to figure out, the conversation was, how do we use whatever levers we have to get them in this conversation? Because there's a lot that we can't do. There's a lot of discussion about the things we can't do until, without them or with them opposing our actions.
Excellent point. Yes, absolutely. Great way to close. So we will have a summary of all these notes and any added notes that you send us in the next couple days posted on the website by sometime next week, as well as the PowerPoint and the recording of the introduction overview with the mayor's comments. Those will all be on the Miami Foundation website, Extreme Heat website. Thank you. And we have our next workshop, as mentioned, focused on streets and trees on March 29th at the same time, 10:30 a.m. Thank you all for your participation and input today. Really appreciate it.